My name is Jeff Gearhart. I'm a research fisheries biologist with the Harvesting Systems and Engineering branch of the National Marine Fisheries Service Laboratory in Pascagoula, Mississippi. In 2008, the Harvesting Systems Unit was tasked with determining the feasibility of applying existing TED technology to skimmer trawl gear. Over the next 4 years, our unit conducted extensive research aimed at developing TEDs for skimmer trawl gear. This involved diver evaluations, sea turtle exclusion testing, and catch retention testing aboard both a NOAA research vessel and numerous commercial vessels that operated along the Gulf Coast as well as in North Carolina. Through this research, we determined that existing TEDs could successfully be adapted to skimmer trawls. And based on these findings, regulations requiring the use of TEDs in skimmer trawls were drafted in 2012. However, while these regulations were being drafted, National Marine Fisheries Service observers were placed in the skimmer trawl fishery, and data provided through these observations indicated that 58% of the sea turtle captures observed were small enough to pass through existing 4-inch minimum bar spacing required in TEDs. These observations prompted withdrawal of the proposed TED regulation for skimmer trawls and identified the need for further research directed at developing TEDs capable of excluding small turtles.
Hi, my name is Con Nguyen. I'm with NOAA's Gear Monitoring Team under Harvesting Systems Unit based in Pascagoula, Mississippi. This demonstration will go over the TED requirements for skimmer trawls and how to take these measurements. TEDs used in skimmers, the TED grid must measure at least 32 inches tall by 32 inches wide. This measurement is taken at a midpoint both vertically and horizontally, outside to outside. I will demonstrate how to take this measurement. First, I'll take the height outside to outside. This TED measures 41 inches tall. Next, I'll measure the width at a midpoint as well. This also has to measure 32 inches wide. This grid measures 33 inches wide, which exceeds the 32-inch minimum requirement. Now on skimmer TEDs, the bore spacings between each bore can be no more than 3 inches. And that is an inside to inside measurement between each individual deflector bore. This bore spacing measures 2.75 inches. I'll repeat this measurement on each bore spacing. On the last bore and the TED grid also cannot exceed 3 inches. For skimmer TEDs, the maximum allowed angle for the TED grid will depend on 2 things. First, the type of grid you're using, whether it is a straight bore versus bent bore, and then the size of the twine on the flap. For this TED, it is a 44-inch inshore TED with a straight bore grid, and on the flap we're using a number 15 twine. So for this configuration, the maximum allowed angle will be 55 degrees. When measuring the grid angle, you need an angle meter, and make sure you use the non-magnetic side of the angle meter. If you use the magnetic side of the base, it will give you an inaccurate measurement on the angle. You put the non-magnetic side against the TED grid, wait for the needle to stabilize. Here we have an angle reading of 50 degrees. For all TEDs used in the shrimp fishery, the flap covering the escape opening cannot be any longer than 24 inches beyond the posterior edge of the grid. This measurement is taken at a midpoint as the TED hangs, not stretched. And here we have a measurement of 15 inches. For TEDs equipped with a single flap, the side attachment of the flap can be no more than 6 inches beyond the posterior edge of the grid. When we take this measurement, we find a row of knots at the bottommost part of the grid, and we follow this row of knots to the side attachment of the flap. What we're doing is transferring the bottommost part of the grid to the side attachment of the flap. From this point, we measure down and make sure that the flap is no more than 6 inches attached. Here, we have a side attachment of 2 inches. On this 44-inch single cover inshore TED, this flap must stretch 44 inches across the escape opening, across the top side only, and then a separate measurement of at least 20 inches vertically. I will demonstrate how to take this measurement. Remember, the minimum requirement for this measurement is 44 inches. As you can see on this escape opening, it measures 46 inches. Once we got this measurement, we will take a separate measurement at the midpoint of the grid. This portion of the flap must also stretch at least 20 inches. Here we have a vertical measurement of 30 inches, which exceeds the minimum requirement of 20 inches. For the 44-inch single cover inshore TED, the recommended leading edge stretch is 56 inches or greater. And the recommended forward cut measurement is 20 inches or greater. Another TED approved for skimmer boats is the double cover offshore opening. This opening is required on any vessel that works in offshore waters. Because this opening exceeds the minimum requirements for an inshore TED, this TED opening can also be used in inshore waters. For TED regulations, the dividing line between inshore and offshore waters is the coal regs demarcation line. Any vessel working in offshore waters, which is any water seaward of the coal regs demarcation line, is required to use an offshore TED such as the double cover. Any vessel that works in inshore waters, which is waters landward of the coal regs demarcation line, can use an offshore TED or the 44-inch inshore single flap TED. On the double cover opening, the flaps consist of 2 equal panels that splits open in the center. The portion where the panels overlap each other can be no more than 15 inches when stretched. As you can see, on this overlap, we have a measurement of 12 inches, which is less than the maximum of 15 inches. The flaps covering the double cover opening is made of 2 equal panels that splits open in the middle. One benefit to using a double cover opening is it makes it easier to remove any debris on the TED grid. On this TED, we have a double cover opening with a flap made of number 15 twine. On a straight bore grid, for this TED, the maximum allowed angle is 55 degrees. To take this measurement, we need an angle meter. When using the angle meter, we must use the non-magnetic side to take this measurement. On this TED, the angle we have is 45 degrees. Remember, for this configuration, the maximum allowed angle is 55 degrees. Here we have a double cover TED. While it's hanging up, we're going to go ahead and measure the forward cut on the TED extension. This measurement will need to measure at least 20 inches when stretched. On this forward cut, we have a measurement of 22 inches, which is larger than the minimum requirement of 20 inches. This is also the recommended cut for the 44-inch single cover inshore TED as well. A forward cut of 20 inches or more will help exclude large debris and any bycatch. Next, on this double cover opening, I will measure the flap length. This measurement is taken at the posterior edge of the grid to the trailing edge of the flap. This measurement is taken as the TED hangs and is not a stretched measurement. Remember, this flap length cannot exceed 24 inches. This flap length measures 16 inches. For TEDs equipped with a double cover flap, the sides of the flap can be attached to the TED extension down the entire length of the flap. As you can see on this TED, we have floats installed. Floats are not required on skimmer TEDs because all skimmer TEDs are required to be top opening. Floats can help with chafing issues as well as help with stabilizing the TED. For this next measurement, we're going to measure the leading edge of this double cover offshore opening. This leading edge needs to measure 56 inches or more when stretched. To take this measurement, we're going to lower the TED down near the deck to stretch it. This leading edge measurement is also the recommended measurement for the 44-inch single cover inshore TED, but is not a requirement. If the number 15 twine on the flap is too small for your application, there are other TED configurations that allow for a thicker twine size that are number 15. On this TED, we have a double cover with the number 30 twine, but the maximum angle of your TED grid is 45 degrees. But this is only allowable on a bent bar grid. Here we have an angle measurement of 43 degrees. Remember, for this configuration, the max allowed angle is 45 degrees.